This is an after-school program podcast.
Welcome to the Home Studio Hangout podcast, where we explore what it's like building, running, and working out of a home studio with your hosts, Joshua Matotek, Andrew Simmons, and many guests in different areas of the music industry.
And welcome back to the Home Studio Hangout podcast. My name is Andrew Simmons. I'm here with my friend Brandon Allshouse from Steel House Mastering, a good friend. He's actually like 20 minutes away from me, but we're doing it over Zoom because I don't have a multiple camera setup because Shama's out of town. He's in Africa. So he's got all of his cameras. Yeah, Brandon, thanks for coming to hang out with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Talk about stuff. I think we've actually probably have known each other the longest out of like the group of people that we now know.
Probably. I know when I moved to Greenville, you were the first person I ever met, like in this whole city.
Yeah.
So,
and then, and even then, like I met you, I think we started talking like a little bit before you moved here because Bowman kind of connected us.
yeah.
And then and then you moved here because that was because of your wife's job, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Who I saw that she was killing it, Community Journal.
Yeah,
So,
she is.
that's
Super
pretty
proud
sick.
of her.
Yeah, that's super sick. So yeah, let's dive right into you. So let's start from the beginning. Who are you and where are you from and how'd you get into music?
Oh boy, where am I
Yeah.
from? That's a loaded question.
That's why I asked it that way.
Dude, I've honestly been like all over the place.
Mhm.
So I grew up in a military family. So I've spent time in Germany, Ohio, North Dakota, Pennsylvania, eventually moved to Georgia. Now I'm here, Greenville, South Carolina.
Heck yeah.
So it's been a long, interesting life. Lots of traveling.
I was like, you've seen a lot of America.
Seen a lot. Yeah. So honestly, I wouldn't trade that for anything. I think like diversifying yourself, getting out there and seeing things outside of your own hometown is probably one of the better things anybody could do.
For sure.
Yeah. A lot of people, I think, not that there's anything wrong with being in a hometown your entire life, but there's definitely different perspectives, and you can increase just your knowledge of what's out there and relate to more people. It's
For
probably
sure.
the best way to put that.
I think a good example of that is like I've lived here roughly my whole life. I've always lived. So I used to live in like the Clemson area, in central outside of Clemson, small one road town near the lake called 6 Mile.
A lot of those around here.
Yeah, exactly. So then I moved to Easley, and then when I left Easley, I ended up moving to Greenville, obviously. So like I've been here technically my whole life, but like I've traveled almost the majority of the country and
nice.
A good bit outside the country.
Yeah. And it's shockingly different.
Yeah, it's super
like
different.
Depending on where you go. Yeah.
It's super different. But I think you get a really interesting grasp on like getting outside of your area, and not only are things very, very different, but also things are very much the same.
Well, yeah, that's true too.
There's a lot of like I'll go through a town and be like, yo, this is literally Greenville. Yo, this is like Tulsa, Oklahoma to me is like literally the same place as Greenville.
Yeah.
And like there's some places in North Carolina and Georgia. Like I feel like Athens and like Chapel Hill have like the same energy to me. And stuff like that.
But on the other hand, like I've been to other places down south, like maybe just a few hours south of here,
Mm-hmm.
And like, this is entirely different from anything I know.
Oh yeah. Like going to like Walhalla or somewhere like that, or like if you've ever been out that far.
I went to Colquitt, Georgia one time for a small trip, and it was literally like going to Mayberry.
That's crazy.
I mean, we drove for like 15 minutes just to find Wi-Fi. I'm like, oh, I could not survive here.
Yeah. Jeez. So let's go back to the beginning on how did you get into music in general? Let's like start like
Sure.
little quick story on how you got into music.
Yeah. So I always grew up around music, like old classic hits, that kind of thing. Like my parents were always into like oldies type stuff. So that was most of my music, like what I was exposed to. That and 90s country, because who didn't grow up on that if you were born in the 90s or early 80s or late 80s?
I feel like everybody born in the 90s was like, you did classic rock, you got old country, and you got like a version of like NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys.
Right. the whole boy band era.
Yeah. You got all three of those at one time.
Yeah. So yeah, at some point, I don't know, I was probably 14, 15 years old. I started to take up an interest in like seeing guitar players, and I'm like, that looks cool. That looks fun to play, people ripping solos and stuff. I'm like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
So I told my parents, I said, hey, I want to play guitar. And they're like, okay, well, we're not going to buy you one because we don't know if you're going to stick with it. So here's your uncle's, I don't know, 20, 30-year-old acoustic. Learn on this.
Jeez.
So
strings just like fully off the fretboard. And
no. It was in good shape, and it was a decent guitar. But as a teenager, I'm like, this is the most uncool instrument. Like, it's a guitar, but it's not what I wanted. I wanted to shred solos.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going to do this on this.
Yeah.
But anyways, my parents told me, they said, if you stick with this, when you turn 16, we'll buy you a guitar. And that's what happened. I stuck with it. I did lessons for 3.5 years, and thus began my voyage into the never-ending journey of music.
Yeah. How did so you started so you basically were starting music around like, we'll say like 14.
Yep.
So what was your high school? I feel like a lot of people in high school have like, that's a big molding time for them as a music person, especially people that
this
end
is
up
exciting.
doing music.
You don't know this, do you?
No, I probably not. That's why I wanted. There's like.
So I was.
Go ahead.
Okay. I was homeschooled, so I didn't have that high school experience. I think I'm pretty normal for someone in my situation. But I did not. And you know what, dude? I seriously, I felt like I missed out. Band club and getting to socialize with other people with similar interests. I didn't have that experience. So yeah, I guess I mean the internet for a while.
So was that like, and so I mean it's still a good, it's not even necessarily about going to high school, it's about that time period in your life, because I feel like
Got it.
that time period in your life is like, so for example, in my specific instance is like, I remember high school because high school was when I learned guitar. I got super into jazz band, but I also got into like My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, and those kind of things that like shaped me as a person, like Panic at the Disco and stuff. And then it led me, but I also kind of got into more hip hop, and I got in, like started understanding pop music more. So it shaped me as a person.
Yeah, very moldable time in our lives.
Yeah.
But it seems like what we take in is what ultimately shapes us as adults.
For sure. So as a musician and like as a music person, like how did that mold you there?
Okay, so I get great question. So that started, I think I got into guitar and stuff.
Mhm.
That started my curiosity with finding like guitar driven music, awesome guitar players I could listen to. It wasn't too long before I started discovering people like Joe Satriani, Neil Zaza,
Mhm.
Eric Johnson, those kind of guys.
Yeah.
Um, and I got really down, like deep into that for a while, discovering all their stuff, instrumental rock, that kind of thing,
Mhm.
which, further shaped me as a musician too, because I'm
Yeah.
trying to learn to play their stuff.
I feel like everybody
Um,
goes through that phase as a guitar player where they're like, my favorites are the
yeah,
G3 guys, like Joe
yeah.
Satriani, John Petrucci,
Paul
and
Gilbert.
Steve Vai, like those, like that crew. Paul
I,
Gilbert,
I
yeah.
think I think most of us grow out of it at some point, and I eventually did. Like I respect those guys as players;
Hmm.
they're phenomenal. But I don't listen to that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
In fact, at the same time, I was listening to a lot of Christian rock growing up in a religious household,
Hmm.
which, my parents weren't really on board with that. But it's like, hey, it's guitar music,
Yeah.
it's stuff I want to listen to, and they're talking about Jesus. So
Yep.
it could be worse, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And you know what? Some of those bands, like, I remember discovering Amberlin. They
Hmm.
were, introduced to me from some friends at the time. And like 20 years later, has it been 20 years, 15 years, whatever it's been? I'm still listening to those guys.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
and they shaped my guitar playing as a musician too, because I'm like
Hmm.
learning how to play all their stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, still to this day, I'll, put on blueprints for the black market and just jam that album. And I'm
Classic.
like,
The first
this is the
record.
best. Yeah. Yeah.
Most people don't reference the first record. Most
I
people
know.
reference like Cities or
The
Never Take
Cities is cool
Friendship.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. But
That's funny that you
they're
referenced the first
all
record.
those early ones from them were so good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dude that was like their sweet spot for me. After Cities, they kind of started losing me, but yeah,
It was hit and miss, but
yeah,
yeah.
I will say there was a record they put out, Vitals, and it was really really good. I
Was that the
really
one
liked
with
it.
the horse
I think it
on the
was no, that was the one
white
with
and black?
there was the one with the
Oh yeah,
fingers.
yeah. That was a good one.
Yeah, yeah, it looked like the paint on them on the tips or
Yep.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yellow paint and all the rings. Yeah,
yeah, that
yeah,
was a cool record. That was
yeah.
like I think that was their first record that they did like on a major.
Oh, okay.
Like I think they did that record on a major. It was either that one or there was another one. But yeah, or it was
Yeah,
either that one or Lowborn, which is where
the horse.
which is where Wes gets his band's name.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's where they got it from. But it was one of those two records. They did it on a major, and then the record after that, they weren't on the major anymore. It's
Very cool.
just fun information for you. So yeah, so that you go through high school at homeschooled,
Yep.
and your high school age range, and then how did you get from I'm playing guitar, I really like guitar players, to I want to get into music production? Because like that's always an interesting jump for me with people, because everybody I feel like
It
has
is.
sometimes it's similar, but also some people have like wild reasons.
Right. So for me, it was just wanting to like write and record. I always had these big dreams. I'm like, I'm gonna write a whole record, It's gonna be solo guitar, even though I can't play awesome solos like all these people I like. I'm gonna write a record like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd buy like a Line 6, what was it, UX1, whatever the small black recording box was at the time. And I would dabble with it, and then it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I sold it. And then I'd buy another one, and same deal, sold it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I did that for a little while, like on and off. And then eventually I started using, I think I got a PreSonus audio box. So it came with Studio One. And I don't know if it was just, I was in a different mindset, different frame of mind, or if it was just the software was intuitive to me, whatever it was, it kind of clicked then. And then that's when I kind of started going down like all the stuff to learn there, buying books, watching YouTube videos. I'm like, oh, I want to learn more about this.
Mm-hmm.
I like, you know, using the software to manipulate sounds and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, hours and hours and hours and hours of hundreds of hours of reading, research, watching videos, reading interviews, that kind of thing. So,
And the and what age range was this for you at this point?
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s. Oh, okay.
When I
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah,
when I
yeah.
actually got into it. Yeah,
I think me and you started doing that around the same time, which is interesting
we may have.
because
Yeah.
I feel like, and this is something, because I think I started when I was like 20 or 21.
Mhm.
It was like right where most people are like sophomore, junior year of college,
Mhm.
probably is like whenever I kind of started getting into it.
Mhm.
But this is something that I have to tell Josh a lot because Josh is like the generation before or generation after us, where
Mhm.
like he grew up with recording software being super accessible,
Mhm.
and you could go to the shop and grab a Focusrite and get a copy of Cubase, Ableton, or Pro Tools,
Mhm.
and at 14 and start producing immediately.
Not when I was a
Yeah.
teenager.
Yeah. Dude, I didn't
It
even
was.
know that that was a thing that you could do.
Mm-mm.
Because I still remember recording to tape even when I was like 15.
Yeah, so all the big studios that I can remember were either doing tape or they had the whole Pro Tools HD systems,
Which is the only way at that point to record like a big
and
band.
they were super expensive.
It was crazy
There was
expensive.
no 2-channel interface for you to have.
Yeah.
Not an affordable one.
The M Audio is the first one that I can remember. The one that you're talking about is the first one that I can personally remember. That's like that was like a would be considered a prosumer product.
Was that the M box that kind of like stood up like this and it was blue and white?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was like the first, like, I wouldn't even call it prosumer because it wasn't quite that level, because it's not like an Antelope or a UA or anything like that level. We're talking like that's the first iteration of what would be considered prosumer, quote unquote.
Yeah,
and it was still like worse than a Focusrite 2i2 is now.
Converters have come a very long way in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah.
Technology's wild like that. But no, I have to tell him all the time. It's like, bro, you're so lucky. And like a lot of people nowadays are super lucky to be able to have the ability to just go and start learning anything. Like YouTube really wasn't even a thing then. Like how most people learn.
I remember when YouTube was new.
Yeah.
And my dad's like, oh, check this out. You can type things in and watch a video on it. And I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And like,
it wasn't a normal part of life. It was something weird like E-Bombs world when that was new.
Exactly. And also there wasn't like tutorials. Like that wasn't a thing. Like tutorials weren't a thing.
Nope.
The only way you found tutorials was doing like going through like Sound on Sound or going through like internet forums.
Yeah, or buying books.
Or buying books, or buying books on them. Yeah. But I mean, as far as the freeway.
Correct.
Yeah. There was no like the free knowledge aspect really didn't exist to the level it does now. Now
it's incredible now.
Yeah. Well, now like, so I've started getting in the last couple of years, I started to get into video editing, just for, for doing the podcast and doing my own YouTube stuff. And like, I talked to Shama. He sent me like a copy of Final Cut that he had, and then 5 YouTube videos. I watched all 5 YouTube videos, and I can edit now. Like that's how quick and easy it is. And it's the same in music stuff. It's like you can spend a couple hours plucking around on a UI and watching some YouTube videos on how to do this, and watch guys like on Twitch stream like Kenny Beats or a bunch of like rock and metal guys like my buddy, like Chris Davis does like rock, like guitar stuff, And you can watch guys like that on Twitch for free and like learn an infinite more knowledge and get super fast,
it's like
super quick.
Right. Yeah. It would be like going into a studio and, watching somebody work, that was really, really difficult to do 15 years ago.
It's really difficult to do now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, outside of, doing it on the internet, like via Twitch or something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But like the fact that that's accessible now is wild.
And for free. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And obviously you have like paid courses and stuff like that as well, which can go even deeper. The fact that something like Nail the Mix or like Mix with the Masters exists and you can go and sit down with people that mix these huge songs relative to your genre and get the stems or see the session and one-to-one watch exactly how they do things all the way down in your mixing setup is just wild to
It's
me.
incredible. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, I always find it because there's very few people that a lot of people are younger, you know, that are they're like mid to late 20s and they're like just young enough to have always kind of had it like at the end of high school, right? I didn't even get started until like 21.
Oh, in music in general?
Well, no, like in production.
Got it.
In production. Like I was always doing music, but I started getting into like Ableton and track building, and I started with Reason. If you remember Reason.
I do. I think I had a free copy of it at some point.
I started it was a DAW before. It was the first like it was kind of a DAW, but you couldn't record audio into it. You could only like do MIDI.
So the first one I could remember using was Sony Acid 7. Do you remember that?
I do. It came for free with like
I think I bought it, dude.
Oh, really?
Like from Best Buy, in an actual software box. Like you used to buy software.
Yep.
Yeah. So
golly, Sony Acid. That's like triggering something in my brain. No, I got a free copy from a dude at church that had a extra key for Propellerhead Reason. And yeah, I kind of got started. That was the first like kind of DAW, but you couldn't record audio into it at all. So no vocals, no guitars, no anything like that. You had to program everything.
Right.
So I made a lot of backing tracks that way, like church backing tracks and stuff. And then I found out about Ableton, and that's like where my like
revolutionary
deep dive went into that. It was like Ableton and Pro Tools kind of happened for me at the same time. So just like deep dive. So you started on Studio One that early. You were on Studio One. Have you always been on Studio One?
Yes. So that was Studio One 2, I think. Is what I started on. Yeah.
What are we on now?
5.
5? Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
So it's been out for a good while.
Dang. That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a combination of it's hard to teach old dog new tricks, so I don't want to switch.
I mean, I feel
or if it's don't fix what's not broken, or I don't know. I've messed around with a few other ones. Nothing ever seemed to click as easy. So stuck with it.
I totally get that. That's how I feel with Ableton. Most people hate it.
Yeah, I did not like Ableton. I couldn't deal with the GUI.
Yeah,
I had Cubase for a little, and I don't know. It was just laid out funky, whatever version I was using.
The way your brain works just doesn't like.
Yep. Pro Tools was the same. I don't know. I remember sitting in front of a Pro Tools computer one time. Again, can't remember what version, but I'm like, there's got to be a way to like, I can't remember what I was trying to do, but I ended up having to look it up on my phone. I'm like, seriously? Like, I felt like something like that should just be like press a button or something. But
that's funny.
Yeah.
People get kind of locked into that kind of stuff, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's interesting because Studio One has come so far from that. That was probably a lot.
Probably the fastest growing DAW.
Yeah,
that's
I know a lot of people use it. A lot of people.
Of people switching.
We did that whole heirloom EP. we did it all in Studio One.
Yeah.
It was really interesting to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, it's one of those things, just different workflows, different people. I think you probably agree they all sound the same.
Yeah.
It's just, what is going to work the best for how your brain works and how you like to work.
I will say Ableton has a sound for some reason, but that has more to do with the way people produce in it and not necessarily the DAW itself. It's because everything's so sample based in Ableton, it tends to lean towards
you to work different.
Yeah, it just tends to lean towards a certain kind of sound. But yes, as far as your main I don't even consider Ableton a recording DAW. It's a production DAW, really. So you're
leans heavily for live use too.
I love it. I love it for that. But your Studio One, Cubase, Pro Tools, Logic, those are the big ones for me, and those all they're all versions of the same thing. It's all however your brain works the best, really.
Correct.
So how did you go from I like recording stuff into more of I want to get paid to do this?
Yeah. So
because that's always an interesting transition.
Well, every time I would sit down to record myself, I'm like, I would just lock up and it's like all the memes, where you see someone shredding or whatever. And then as soon as I hit record, it's like, I don't know what to do.
Mad red light syndrome.
Right. That was me every time I sat down. So, I started meeting people that were musicians, singers, whatever. I'm like, hey, I got a microphone and, some gear. You want to record some stuff? And they're like, sure. So, I just started doing that. A lot of it was free. Eventually I'm like, hey, I could probably charge money for this. Which I did. I remember I think it was one of my first paid projects I did. I recorded this and it's not great, but nobody's first work is ever stellar.
Yeah.
But recorded this whole thing, drums, guitars, bass, singing, all the overdubs, all that for $75. And I thought I was doing well. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a fair rate, right?
Yeah.
Until I realized how many hours I put into it.
You started
outside
doing
of recording,
the math.
Yeah. And I'm like, I might be making 75 cents an hour on this. So it kind of just turned into, I didn't like doing it for myself, and I enjoyed talking to people. I enjoyed working with people. And I'm like, hey, this could maybe turn into something. So I kind of just kept doing that.
Because you started producing and recording and doing mixing stuff, right?
Mixing, yep, exactly.
Because that was when you were in Rome, or was that before you were in Rome?
No, when I started actually doing it for other people and stuff, that was when I was in Rome.
Okay.
Not just doing stuff for myself.
Rome, Georgia, to be specific.
Correct.
To people, yes. Not Rome, Italy.
Yeah, that would be awesome, but
Brandon's not that cool.
I am not.
But yeah, because that was when I met you whenever you were still mixing and producing a little bit. You were leaning away from producing.
I was starting to lean away, I think, whenever I
you were just doing mixing and mastering, I believe, whenever you were starting to lean into just doing mixing and mastering, I believe.
Right. And I mean, part of that came down to, I didn't have a dedicated recording space. It was like most people, whatever spare room you could hold hostage for yourself.
Yeah. And recording gear definitely wasn't to where it is now, where you can kind of just be anywhere and record pretty good stuff.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was there. It's just expensive. I didn't have money. Again, I'm charging $75 for a whole production. You can't afford anything with that, right?
You can barely afford goldfish.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe some beer and pizza.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, I mean, I knew my limitations. I didn't try to overinflate myself to be something I wasn't. I knew I had a very modest setup, very very small, so I try to just do a lot of like singer-songwriter stuff. So it's like, 2-3 mics max. And
A lot
you
of
don't
in the
really
box production stuff.
yeah, you don't need a gigantic space to do this kind of stuff. And I had a small room, so it's like I don't want 6 people in there, that's too much. So yeah, I did a lot of that kind of stuff. What got me away from it was one, I eventually started to not like it so much. Maybe because I was doing this from my home. It was like, I got random strangers coming up that I don't really know. These are people I've never met before.
You were
So there
married
was
at
always,
this point too, right?
I was married too. So I kind of, if I was single, that would have been one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like a security thing on my end. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to make my wife uncomfortable.
For sure.
I don't want to open us up to something that, you just never know.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, I can't tell you how many times I would book a date. And this is before I had a lot of business knowledge either.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd book a date and a time, and then I'd sit there and I'd wait an hour and a half past when they were supposed to be there. And they'd either be like, I'm on my way, or, I'm on my way. Oh, sorry, I have to cancel. I did that so many times before I started learning that. You gotta get
a
deposits.
deposit. Yeah, gotta get deposits, baby. And this, listeners, is why we get deposits. Because
it is.
I have driven 4 hours first to Raleigh for a session before and had somebody cancel on me without a deposit. And I have never not gotten a deposit since then, because that is an 8-hour round trip. And I was pissed.
Somebody always ruins it for everybody. And you only have to learn the hard lesson once.
Yep. I was pissed. Luckily, the studio that booked me, because like I was just the engineer on the session. So the studio just said, we'll pay you half of what they booked. So like I ended up getting paid half, which is better than nothing. But
it covered your gas.
It covered my gas and my food to get there. And like I didn't really
not
make
your
anything.
8 hours of wasted time.
Exactly. Yeah. It didn't cover my hourly. It covered my drive, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And even now, like everything I do now is remote work. I think I've had literally one attended session the last couple years. And I don't even like to do those.
Yeah.
But it's if it's a full project, like a full album, it's half down before work even starts.
Yeah.
If it's singles, it's the entire amount up before work starts. Like I said, you only learn that hard lesson once, and
oh, for sure. And then you only get screwed out of money so many times until you can't get screwed out of money anymore.
Right. But I mean, money aside, I've also come to learn that those that are really serious about their craft and what they're doing have no problem doing that.
Yes.
Those who do not care about their project or what they're trying to do, they won't do that.
Yeah, they care more about the money and not paying
what
a down
they're
payment.
Actually doing. Yeah, they don't care about your time or any of that. Yeah. So
no, that's really good. The so you get rid of the recording side. You're going to just mixing and mastering. I feel like you are the ultimate person of try everything until you find the right thing.
I did do that.
Yeah, you are. I feel like you are the best example of that kind of person, because you try to do the artist thing yourself, and then you went to recording, and then you started doing recording, mixing, and mastering, and then you got rid of recording, and then you started doing mixing and mastering, then you got rid of mixing.
Dude, I don't know. I think it's part of my undiagnosed ADD. Or ADHD, whichever one it is. Maybe it's both for all I know. I don't know. I like to throw a lot of things at the wall and see what sticks. And it's outside of music too.
Yeah.
You can ask my wife. I take up a lot of different things and most of them do not stick.
Hey, cooking stuck though.
Cooking stuck and music like this stuck. But there's been a lot of things. I got a whole box of electronics components in my closet right now. At one point I'm like, I'm going to build guitar pedals. And then I'm like, this is a lot of work for $50. Yep. So I like, Well, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But yet, I mean, I got some stuff from it. I learned, I learned how to use multimeter. I learned how to solder, desolder, that kind of things.
And I'm sure that's
Um,
helped you with like fixing parts for your
yes, yeah,
outboard gear and things like
absolutely.
that.
If things around the house, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't entirely useless, but
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah. Well, if you want to know how I just niched down into mastering,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So
yep.
let's as we're progressing, you moved to just mixing and mastering. What brought you to just cutting and just going all in on mastering?
I think it was maybe twofold. So one I think was a lot out of necessity. It's like, okay, I'm working on music mixing. I need to get this mastered, or at least that's what I'm told. That's what we're all told. It has to be mastered.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, what is that? So I start, asking people, which I think is the best thing you can do, is just ask people that do this. People that have preferably doing it longer than you, have more experience, see what they have to say. So yeah, that's how that started. When I started posting about that, I remember having an individual tell me, that's not mastering and you can't do it. I said, okay, bet. Hold my beer.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. So I think part of it was determination of one. I actually really liked doing it. That's why I niched down into it. I liked the fact that I could get a song in my desk and it would be off my desk, within a day.
Yeah.
I could do 4, 5, 6 songs in a day. So that was cool. It was no more of this, here's this, mix the song for a week or whatever, back and forth revisions, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Are these stems all correct? Are these in the right place? You have different sample
I need
rates?
to do editing? Yes, exactly. It was just a lot of stuff I didn't want to deal with. Whereas I drop a song into a session, hit play, I'm like, sounds awesome. Let's make it sound better. So yeah, I really enjoyed that process. And then it also occurred to me a lot of people didn't understand it, and a lot of people need it, or at least want it. So I'm like, cool, I'm going to just focus on this, because if there's one thing, the music world is super saturated, and there are a ton of people that say they do everything, and not nearly as many that just do one thing and do it really well. And I'm like, well, if I want to stand out in this saturated market, then I'm just going to be the guy that does that one thing really well. So I niched down into that. So yeah, I guess that's kind of how I got there.
Do you feel like it came with a whole host of issues up front? Like, what were your biggest issues when you first started really delving into the mastering side?
Clients, because I probably did it too soon. So I didn't really have a lot of people coming, but I was also working the job at the time, full time. So it was one of those, what we all do, side gig, and then whatever I make on music and whatever free time I have for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was slow. It was very, very slow at first.
Yeah. I feel like there is something to be said for timing with that kind of thing.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
For sure. I think I did the same thing, right? Where I've been making this slow transition, really slow. You've seen me making this slow transition of doing less heavy music and doing more, literally anything else, really. I like heavy music.
Sure.
But I am not the best at it, and I fully realize that. And so there are guys that do and we're talking heavy music. Right. I don't do that well at all. I can do metalcore and I can do rock music. Anything heavier than that, it's not my specialty. There are guys that do way better than me on those. So I'm leaning into the hip hop and a little bit of rock and pop side of things. And I feel like if I would have made the hard switch into that, I would have lost and just rejected every client. I would have lost a bunch of
Oh, for
potential
sure.
clients and
Yeah, for sure.
referrals and all that kind of stuff as well.
Yep. Yep.
And do you find that that's kind of what happened to you? You just went full send on the mastering thing, and
Pretty much, unless somebody really wanted me to mix something and I felt comfortable doing it. But like you, I'm like, well, I know people that mix country really, really well. Why would I do it if they can do it better? And, same with other stuff, pop, EDM, whatever. I'm like, well, so-and-so does this and that. So, yeah, I do tell people this all the time. Like, if you're going to do something, like, I don't know, like, say you're like, I want to start a career mixing. Don't stop doing whatever you're doing now for money too soon.
Yeah.
Or you're going to be so stressed out over where's my next paycheck coming from when you didn't have to do that. A lot of it's ego.
Yeah.
Where it's like we have, or we're just led to believe that if you're not doing music 100% full time, you're not actually a successful individual in this career.
Which is a lie. That's the biggest lie.
It's entirely untrue. Entirely.
Most
you can
people
still do really cool projects.
I was gonna say most people in the music industry don't do music full time.
They do something else. They're diversified.
Yeah, they at least do it 50% of the time, but then they also do things like they have real estate investments, or they like own a business, or
they just have a job. Like I still have a job, right?
Yeah.
That gives me health insurance, dental insurance, 401k. It's like that stuff costs a ton of money if you're self-employed.
Yeah.
It would take a huge chunk out of my earnings if I didn't do that.
I keep my coffee job because it prevents me from having to pay self-employment tax in South Carolina. In South Carolina, as long as you have a W-2 on your name, you don't have to pay self-employment tax, which is like a third of your money.
Yeah.
So like just by working 1 day a week for 4 hours, I save myself thousands of dollars, potentially tens of thousands of dollars, or hundreds of thousands of dollars if it gets to that point. Like, just by working taking 4 hours out of my week to go work at a coffee shop, which I also enjoy, and I also like that work because I mean, you
I still do
in the
chef
kitchen,
stuff.
right? Yeah, you still do chef stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, you meet people. You get out. I think it's healthy for us as individuals to get out and not be stuck in our studio all day.
For sure.
Especially, I mean, you got windows. I don't have windows in my space.
Yeah.
I need to see sunlight.
I was gonna say, just to sidebar, some people that some people don't know about you, because I feel like most of the time on the internet, you'll talk about cooking stuff every now and again, but
I do, yeah.
But like, it's a huge part of your life.
Yeah. I've been doing it longer than music, so
you've cooked for or prepared meals for some pretty big people.
Yeah. So when I was at Husk Greenville, I was working at Sean Brock's restaurant, Husk, which had Jonathan Buck was James Beard nominated. For those who don't know, like a James Beard Award is a big deal.
It's like it's outside of a Michelin star. It's like the biggest thing you can
almost get. Yeah, it's like almost like getting a Grammy or something.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big deal. And then on top of that, we had a Michelin star dinner at that restaurant.
Oh, so really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so I got to work side by side with a Michelin star chef from California. Design a whole menu just for that night. Well, designed the dessert just for that night.
Yeah, because you were the dessert chef, right?
Yes.
Mainly.
Yeah, executive pastry chef. And then when I'm trying to remember who it was. We had Ted Nugent come in one time. He came in for lunch. So
that's funny.
That was cool. We also had wasn't Elton John. Who was it?
You served a Beatle, right?
Yes, Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
When he came to Greenville, we were told he was gluten-free, so I made a gluten-free dessert for that.
No, he's vegan.
Maybe it was that. Whatever it was.
Yeah, I think he's vegan.
He's something. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I tell people I cooked for him, right? he never showed.
That's funny.
His band showed, so there's that.
That's all. I mean, that's cool.
He wasn't there.
Yeah, that's cool. You still got to prepare his meal.
Right. Or at least his band's meal.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, yeah, Greenville has enough large people come through that want to try high end stuff that.
Correct. Yeah.
Like, I'm sure you've been able to accidentally cook for a lot of cool people.
Yeah, I'm sure like people that I just didn't even know were there or whatever,
Yeah.
or showed up when I wasn't working, but seeing I was the only pastry chef anyways.
Mm-hmm.
If they got dessert, they had my cooking.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's true. I didn't even realize that. I forgot that you were the only pastry chef.
Dude, the only one. If there was 200 covers on a Saturday night, I was solely responsible for making sure that there was enough desserts for a 200 cover night, and then coming in Sunday morning and recovering everything. So yeah,
that's rough.
Yeah. Restaurant life is a very tough job.
Yeah, but you still do that, and I feel like it's to you as coffee is to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's a nice reprieve
mm-hmm.
from having to really, because I mean, focusing on only music. I will say, and this is something that people don't realize until they have to do it as their job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Focusing on just doing that and being in that headspace, it gets really tiring really, really fast. Like,
right.
It gets
no
so
doubt.
tired. Even outside of just ear fatigue, mentally, it gets so tiring.
Yep. Yeah, there's ear fatigue. There's the mental fatigue. There's the depression from being on social media all the time.
Mm-hmm. And being locked in a room by yourself.
Yep. So, it's rough, dude.
And then the comparison and all that kind of stuff. Yep. And like, luckily we have like good people online that we're friends with that, mm-hmm. we can razz each other and like, have fun and stuff. But, like without that, it would kind of suck to be on the internet. I'm gonna be real.
If I was by myself, there's no way I would have lasted this long.
Yeah.
Like if I didn't have friends in this community. And I tell people all the time, the music community is very big
mm-hmm.
and very, very small at the same time.
Yep.
It doesn't take you long before you start meeting people that's like, oh, wow, you did this and this. That's
mm-hmm.
awesome.
Yeah. We're in chats with people who literally work with some of the biggest record labels in the country.
Dude, I'm doing records for a guy that was a producer on Kanye's Donda album.
That's
like,
so
it's
sick.
Crazy. And I'm like, I didn't even know it. Like when I started doing the work for him, I'm like, wait, what? You worked on Donda? That's insane.
Yeah.
So
That's
you
wild.
just never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah. Well, and we're so close to Atlanta that we get a lot of that kind of world too, which is pretty cool.
Right.
So I think the last thing we'll talk about, because we don't have a ton of time.
Yeah, I got like 10 minutes.
Actually, we'll save it because we're going to do another episode just talking about mastering. And I was going to ask you about your room, but I think that's better posed into talking about treatment in a mastering space and what goes into that. So
let's do it.
Yeah, because I know you will want to spend a good amount of time talking about like the full what it went into that room. You know what I mean? So part 2 will be from the time that this releases, it'll probably be like a few weeks after, but we're going to do a deep dive just on mastering. Brandon's agreed to come back and just do a episode just on mastering. And then also, I guess we'll talk just about mastering specifically and what it went into your room. So I think for the last question, I'm actually going to say, what are some of the biggest issues that you find in mixes consistently?
Too much high end is pretty common.
Okay.
Like around the either super, like a ton of sibilants around 10K, 5 and 6K, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I haven't been able to figure out why. I don't know if it's because high end, if it's untreated rooms, so high end often sounds really smeary, that kind of thing.
Is this a genre specific thing generally, or is this kind of across the board?
It's generally across the board.
Okay.
And then also low end issues are always something, either undefined low end, not enough, too much, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody struggles with
I
low
would
end.
I would
ends
have
for
I would
installation.
have thought that over compression on the master bus would have been more of an issue.
That's not something I have dealt with a whole lot on my end.
Really?
No.
Interesting.
Every once in a while, but maybe it's just because I generally tell people, if the mix sounds really good with the mix bus processing, go ahead and send it.
Mhm.
But if you're super unsure, just go ahead and just send me without it. And if there's an issue, we'll talk about it.
That's
So,
really smart.
yeah.
Okay, so
I
you're
try to
probably
avoid some of that
I was
stuff.
say you're probably negating some issues
I may be. Yeah.
by having that, because I know I would always go a little bit too hot on the two bus
But if you were doing aggressive music, that's part of that.
Yeah.
And you probably saw a lot more aggressive music styles than what I see.
Yes, that is true. And yeah, people overbake their stuff.
Correct.
In
Especially
that kind
in metal.
of,
yeah.
In that like deathcore, heavier stuff. Yeah. Like it's really easy to overbake your two bus.
100%. Yep.
Well, Brandon, I know you got a head. I will we'll plan another time for you to come back and do a part 2.
Reconvene and do this again.
Yeah, we'll do it again. Thanks so much for hanging out today. Thanks so much, listeners, for listening. Brandon, where can they find you on socials? Do a socials plug real quick.
Oh boy. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Type my name in. You should be able to find me.
What's your Instagram handle, if you know off the top of your head?
I think it's Stillhouse Mastering.
Gotcha.
So if you type that in, you'll find it. And then also my website, stillhousemastering.com. Look me up, friend me. Maybe if you do friend me, send me a message. Say, hey, I saw you on the podcast, because I think I got like 600 or 700 friend requests I haven't responded to. So send me a message first. But if you enjoyed it, like, follow.
Hop in Brandon's DMs, hit up steelhousemastering.com and check out his work. And Brandon's a dope dude, so he's always down to talk.
Thanks, man.
And dude, of course, glad to have you. We will see you guys later.
Yep. Peace.